Good morning, everybody. Ministers, good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to address this incredibly important initiative for Ireland. And I'm going to talk about today Ireland's future economy, technology, talent, and emerging opportunities. I've worked in the technology industry for over 20 years, and I've seen incredible change. And in the last several years, I've been at the bleeding edge of seeing how technology is fundamentally changing the world, as I founded the DOC at Accenture, a multidisciplinary research and incubation hub. But I've also seen our opportunity to positively influence things. I've also been involved in the National Skills Strategy. I'm involved in the Action Plan for Jobs in the Dublin region, and actually also involved with a number of our colleges, with Trinity and with DCU in broader initiatives. But I've also experienced personally, I guess throughout my career, the incredible change that is happening in the broader environment from a jobs perspective. Sitting at the kitchen table, filling out my CAO form to study electronic engineering, I would never imagined that I would be working for a company that is 3 times the size of Cork, with 460,000 people. I would never have imagined that I'd be leading global teams and setting up new operations. And I've never imagined that I would get an opportunity to create my own role and my own job spec multiple times within my career. So I guess we all know that the world is changing, and it's a rich and complex story, so I want to set the scene first. So we live in unprecedented times, and technology is fundamentally changing how we work and how we live. Antisha mentioned artificial intelligence, which is creating new levels of personalization, and technology is responding to us. The Internet of Things is changing the way in which we live in our homes, our cars, and our factories. Technologies like blockchain are really becoming a reality and extending digital trust, and quantum computing will allow us to solve currently intractable problems. But it's also causing innately human reactions and challenging our individual relationships with technology. It's challenging our views on privacy and trust. It's causing us to think about the democratization of the technology advantage. And it's also raising questions like the important questions we're asking today as to what is the future nature of work for generations to come. The business world has also undergone significant change. So half of the companies in the Fortune 500 in 2000 have now disappeared. That's incredible change. Also what we're seeing is changing citizen expectations. In our personal lives, brands like Amazon actually respond to us and personalize our experience. We can customize products anywhere from shoes to cars. And we're starting to see those changing expectations actually now bleed into working life. We call this the Sunday to Monday phenomenon, where employers will need to continually respond and change the way in which we interact with our employees in order to retain the best talent. According to a recent survey conducted by LinkedIn and Capgemini, 30% of professionals believe that their skills will be outdated within 1 to 2 years. An additional 38% say that their skills will be outdated in 4 to 5 years. Add those up, that's 68% of professionals believe that their skills will be generally obsolete within 5 years. Think about that time frame. Our parents expected us to have a job for life, but a report published by Dell last summer said that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030 do not exist right now. We can't even imagine what they will be. These stats and research also come to life every single day. My 9-year-old daughter wakes up every single morning and says, "Hey Google, what's the weather today?" And she uses that information in order to pick out her outfit for the day. This is completely normal to her. She is 9 years old, and when she was born, the iPad was not invented. That is incredible change in the space of 10 years. So we're in completely uncharted territory. So whether you're a startup, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're an Indigenous company or a large business, this provides incredible opportunity, but also, as you can imagine, a significant amount of challenge. So building on some of the things Louise spoke about earlier, when I think about the future of jobs, I look at it from 2 angles. So the supply side. So what are the new skills that people need to bring into the economy? And the other side is the demand side. So what is the changing role of enterprise and the state, and how can we meet these new demands? So let me take supply first. I think about it in three areas. First of all, in terms of technical skills. So specialised and market-relevant skills will be a must to succeed in the new economy, but these are changing incredibly fast. Let me give you some stats to give you an idea. So research published by LinkedIn in January said the currently most in-demand skills are cloud computing and middleware and integration software. The top jobs with growth potential are machine learning engineer, data scientist, and big data engineer. These jobs barely featured 5 years ago, and they're the most popular and the most in demand. But it's not just about technical skills. Human-centric skills matter too, and you'll hear me using the word human-centric quite a lot, because not all the jobs in technology are actually technical. So Accenture research paradoxically has shown that actually the human skills are even more important in this digital economy. Skills to interact with each other, to show empathy, to build relationships, and to be self-aware are incredibly important. So this whole area of human-centric design, which effectively means not thinking about it from a technology out, but thinking about it from a human perspective. And the World Economic Forum's report on future jobs says that the biggest increase in skills demand by 2020 will be in complex problem solving and social skills. And Accenture's 2007 Skills of the Future survey said that adaptability will be the top skill in 10 years' time. Adaptability. So that just shows you how things are changing. And of course, future-proofing our skills with this speed of change is incredibly important. And we're seeing more and more, it's actually the mix of technical skills and the mix of these human-centric skills, this real multidisciplinary approach is becoming more and more prevalent. And it is very complex. On the demand side, so workers are demanding more flexibility. We see it everywhere. And research that we have done says that digital natives will have 5 careers and 20 jobs within their lifetime. So Taoiseach mentioned this as well, but 5 careers, it's hard even to imagine. LinkedIn shows significant growth in the freelance sector, particularly in legacy industries like healthcare and retail. And our research predicts that in the US, 66% of workers by 2020 will have flexible working arrangements and multiple sources of income. So we're seeing incredible dynamism happening in the working environment. But this poses a lot of questions from us from an enterprise perspective. We're going to have to redefine what is our workforce. We're going to look at how do we differently engage our workforce when not everybody is an employee. We're going to have a look at where do people work, how do people work. And Luis mentioned earlier managerial skills. That is going to fundamentally change when you're managing people on totally different arrangements. So there's quite a lot of change that is going to happen in this space. So where should Ireland focus from this perspective overall? So my aspiration for Ireland is that we will have an inclusive future of work where all workers have the motivation, and I'll speak about that in a few minutes, the means and the opportunity to thrive in this new economy. And I think we need to look at it from 3 angles. The first is from an individual perspective, so creating motivated and empowered workforce. So that starts with me, which each individual. Secondly, from a government perspective. So the role of government in an uncertain era becomes ever more important. And third, the broader ecosystem. I think we need to think about a new model for partnership across the broader ecosystem to really get the benefits in the new economy. So let me go through those one by one. The first is from an individual perspective, and this is quite personal. So me as a worker, or we have future workers in the room today, how do I see myself in this new economy? And I think we've got to make a mind shift in how we think about things. And I believe a growth mindset is key. You all may be quite familiar with this, but it's a term invented by Carol Dweck, who's a professor in psychology in Stanford University and a leading researcher in the field of motivation. It describes a person's underlying beliefs about learning and intelligence. If you have a growth mindset, you believe that your most basic abilities can be improved through dedication and hard work. So if you think about that, that provides you with a curiosity and a love of learning, which gives you greater agility and resilience to stay relevant in a very quickly changing economy. As I was growing up, my parents didn't talk about the term growth mindset, but they did instill in me that same principle. They taught me education didn't stop when you finished school or when you went to college, but it was a lifelong journey. and you have to be constantly learning and preparing yourself for opportunities. My own father walked the talk, and he graduated with his law degree at the age of 71. So you can imagine it was all around me every single day as I grew up. And I've tried to emulate those principles as well. I mentioned earlier I studied electronic engineering, and over time I've added commercial skills, which has meant going back to college multiple times for postgrads, professional qualification in accountancy. But it's also shaped my views and actually how I help others to get similar opportunities. So I do quite a lot of work with Coder Dojo, that you'll all be familiar with, an Irish-born organisation, not-for-profit, that helps kids to code. And I've been helping them to scale both nationally and internationally. And also work I do with Community Education Group on Casall in Tala West, then Jobstown. And they believe in a one-generation solution. So if you can bring one person in a disadvantaged area to third level, it will change the fate of the entire generations after them. So the first thing I think is individual motivation is the first key building block. The second, of course, is the role of government. And I think this is time for bold leadership, and I think it's been stated with the agenda that's been laid out for this initiative. I also think it's a time for confidence and for courage. And I think we need to make a shift in how we think about things overall. And I think we need to make a shift to a human-centric view rather than a service-centric or department-centric view. And this will obviously require a focused and coordinated effort. So it is fantastic to have 6 ministers in the room today actually working together and thinking about this together, because I think it's going to fundamentally have us rethink education, social inclusion and equality, incentivizing innovation and entrepreneurship, and obviously the finances to fund the change and really understand it. And I guess having spent multiple years in working in innovation, my biggest observation is when times are changing so fast, you cannot predict or forecast the future in the way you once could. So how can government make good decisions when the premise in which you need to make decisions continually changes? And I think, taking a leaf out of the innovation book, there are 2 decision-making techniques that I think could stand us in good stead. The first one is no regret moves, and the second one is big bets. So if I take those one by one. So no regret moves, and what I mean by this is decisions you can make that will stand us in good stead no matter what the outcome is. Excuse me. And this gives us confidence to know we've already started along the right path. Taoiseach mentioned lifelong learning, and I think you're going to hear this coming up again. So I think lifelong learning is important, and also showing people pathways to work in the new economy. Whether you take the Internet of Things or blockchain, what can we do to teach people about these today? But actually the way in which people need to learn about them is actually quite different. There's a much greater commitment to experience-based skills development, because these technologies emerge quickly. They need to be incubated and experimented on. We need to test their boundaries and actually see how they work in the real world. So I believe there's a need for a new type of deeply skilled apprenticeship model in these high-tech spaces. Secondly, I think we also need to really take care not to create a broader digital divide. The OECD mentions that poorer, less educated, less digitally literate adults face significant informational and motivational boundaries. We must act deliberately to make sure this lifelong learning revolution that we strive for does not deepen economic and social inequalities. And thirdly, I think redefining what does full employment mean. To have a more inclusive and an open economy, we need almost to try and find those harder to reach cohorts and attract those and retain them within the workforce. So anywhere from, Taoiseach mentioned it as well, is people returning to the workforce after taking breaks for parenting or other reasons. We need to bring more women into the workplace, and there's significant programs in a lot of enterprises around this space, but also a big focus on motivation and opportunity in disadvantaged regions. So there are a series of some of the approaches I think we could start on effectively tomorrow to really make no regret moves. The second area we need to invest in effectively is big bets, and define the areas where we really believe that the country needs to go. And this will take three real courage, and there's 3 areas I'd like to mention. So Accenture research recommends that business leaders must focus on anticipating the skills our organizations need, and then we need to help workers in order to build those skills and apply new skills along their careers. And I believe the same principle can apply to a country. We need to plan the new areas of opportunity, as this initiative is starting to do, but also be very honest about the potential workforce vulnerabilities, because the best way to mitigate those vulnerabilities is to understand where they are and to plan for them. So I think this initiative is really bringing those to the fore. Secondly, I think we need to rethink our traditional learning systems, because they're typically primarily focused on those who are new to the labour market or the unemployed. When we know there are going to be pressing skilling needs for roles for workers that are, all the stats say, our jobs are changing on a day-by-day basis. I think reframing learning and education systems to cope with the principles and the practicalities of lifelong learning is incredibly important, because we know that people are going to have to reskill and reskill multiple times in order to really have the possibility of these 5 careers. And thirdly, Ireland is going to need to make some content big bets. What will we be famous for in 2030? Take even one example, artificial intelligence. I mentioned a couple of features of that earlier, but if you think about voice recognition is a reality in our homes now and provides huge opportunity through the Amazon Echo, Google Home and others. Biometrics is fundamentally changing how we can manage within the world. It's been used globally to look at the identity crisis for 1.2 billion refugees, and Accenture is involved there. Computer vision systems are changing our factories, our ability to solve crime, and these will only develop. So Ireland should be part of this wave overall, and we could make a commitment to be a world leader in this technology by 2030. And the final piece I mentioned was around the ecosystem, because I believe that everything we're talking about, everything you're talking about, are big ambitions, and government should not and cannot do this alone. I've learned in working in the dock the incredible power of bringing multidisciplines together to really solve for the future. When different parties come together with completely different views and different angles, it does create a natural tension, but that natural tension is really important to create, because at the edge of that natural tension is the spark of innovation and new ideas. So I believe we do need this new model for partnership. 2 examples in this space I think are important. Industry has a huge role to play in terms of skilling our people. I mentioned earlier, Accenture has research in the future of work, and it recommends that business leaders must completely rethink how we prepare our workforces, from anticipating the skills we're going to need in the future, but to actually helping people to learn and apply those new skills. And for us, actually, it's both responsible, but it's also cost effective. I think a key challenge in this space is the widening gap between the skills that people develop through our traditional learning systems. That can be corporate education, it can be university and schools, and the skills they're going to need to thrive in the digital world. I believe that business and education need to come together, and more on this space overall. And there's some really good examples of it. I see Brian here, the data science BSc in DCU. It is a living degree and is co-created with industry. See Trinity come together from a tangent perspective and really upskilling enterprises on innovation thinking. I think we need to see more and more of this within the broader environment. And I also think employers, ourselves included, really need to think as reskilling our employees as a constant evolution in the new normal, but we can't do it alone. The final point on this piece here is I think more focus is needed on creating enterprise. And Luis mentioned a number of things around this and talked about the barriers to entrepreneurship. We see a huge amount of innovation coming out of the startup community that we can all learn from, but I think more work, as Luis said, needs to be done, and the partnership between Indigenous enterprise, startups and government to really look at what are those incentives to create new businesses, but also actually to create new enterprises within businesses. And I think also the multinational companies need to do more to partner with startups. It's good for startups because they can get into the supply chain of large global organizations, but it's also good for us because we have an opportunity to see that innovation and really ride that wave as well. So I think the new model for partnership is really important. So in conclusion, we say the pace of change will never be as slow as it is today. I don't believe that this is a future economy challenge. I think it's a now economy challenge. But I'm very optimistic because initiatives like this make me optimistic. But I think it's really important that we act now. But most of all, I guess the Irish people make me optimistic. Our greatest natural resource has always been our people. Our heritage is the land of saints and scholars, a nation thirsty for knowledge and for exploration, and continually open to change and reinvention all of the time. This has historically stood us in good stead, and I think it will in the future. So I applaud government for putting this initiative on the table, and I think we do have the opportunity to reinvent our future. For in the words of the great David Bowie, tomorrow belongs to those who can hear it coming. Thank you.